It started with a letter that should have never reached me. A faded Christmas envelope, edges wrinkled by time, my full name written in a child's shaky handwriting. When I first saw it in my mailbox, I thought it was a mistake. Some lost piece of holiday junk mail finally resurfacing from the dead. But the moment I touched it, something in my chest tightened, like my body recognized it before my mind did. The return address was scribbled in blue crayon, and above it, the sender's name, Liam Parker. A name everyone in this town knows for the worst reason possible. I carried the letter inside, turning it in my hands, feeling the weight of something old, something fragile. The postmark was nearly erased, but the year was still visible, the year of the blackout, the year a 10-year-old boy disappeared without a trace. I stood in my kitchen staring at the envelope as if it might vanish the way Liam did, swallowed whole by a night no one ever fully understood. I shouldn't have opened it. Every instinct told me to put it down. But the handwriting, the uneven loops, the childish confidence, it felt like the words were reaching out across decades. When I tore the envelope open, a small folded page slipped out. The paper was brittle, yellowed, covered in the kind of handwriting kids use when they're trying very hard to be brave. The first line froze me. If something happens tonight, give this to Michael Reed. My throat tightened. My name, written long before the letter ever reached this house, long before anyone knew I would live here, long before my life even intersected with anything connected to Liam Parker. And yet there it was, as real as the cold air in the room. I kept reading, each sentence more unsettling than the last. Liam wrote about footsteps outside his window, about the man who keeps coming back, about a promise he made to someone he trusted, and at the bottom, in letters that pressed deep into the page, he repeated my name, as if begging me to understand something I hadn't lived yet, something he didn't survive long enough to explain. And the strangest part? At the time this letter was written, I wasn't even born. If this opening pulled you in, stay with me. The truth behind Liam Parker's disappearance is far more disturbing than the town ever admitted. And before we continue, tell me in the comments what you think happened that night. I want to hear your theory. And if stories like this grip you the way they do me, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the moment the truth finally comes together. I didn't move for a long time after reading that letter. It sat on my kitchen table like a piece of evidence from a life I never lived. The name Michael Reed stared back at me from a page written decades ago by a boy who vanished in the dark. I tried convincing myself it was a coincidence. Maybe someone with my name lived here before me. Maybe the letter was misdelivered. Maybe grief over my brother Aaron was messing with my head. But the more I stared at the loops of Liam's handwriting, the more I felt like the letter wasn't meant for someone else. It was meant for me, specifically me. I've never believed in fate. I'm a practical man, the type who checks door locks twice and memorizes Wi-Fi passwords for fun. I don't like unsolved things. I don't like loose ends. So when a child who disappeared during a historic blackout writes my name years before I ever existed in this town, something in me refuses to ignore it. Especially now. Especially after losing Aaron, the only person who ever understood me without asking questions. Maybe grief makes you see patterns that aren't there. Or maybe it makes you finally look at the ones you've avoided. I decided to retrace the letter's path. I visited the old post office, the neighborhood where the blackout hit the hardest, and even the street where Liam Parker lived with his mother, Rachel. Every place felt stuck in time. The houses, the cracked sidewalks, the sagging streetlights, all of them holding pieces of a story the town tried to bury. You could feel the silence there, the kind that knows too much. People still remember that night. They remember the sudden darkness, the screams, the frantic flashlight beams slicing through the snow. They remember Rachel Parker running barefoot into the street, calling her son's name until her voice broke. But what they don't remember, or pretend not to, is everything that happened just before the lights went out. And if Liam wrote my name the way he did, then whatever he saw that night was never meant to stay buried. Liam Parker was 10 years old the night the town went dark. 10 years old, small for his age, a kid who kept his fears folded into notebook pages instead of saying them out loud. He lived with his mother, Rachel, in a narrow blue house at the end of Willow Lane, the kind of place where wind sneaks through window frames and every floorboard knows your footsteps. Rachel was a nurse working the evening shift at the hospital across town. Liam hated those nights because the house felt too big, too quiet, too capable of swallowing echoes whole. But he never complained. Rachel worked too hard already. That night, December 23rd, Liam sat at the kitchen table, drawing Christmas cards he'd never send. He always made them early in case something happened. That's how he explained it to his mother once, when she found a stack hidden behind his bed. "Just in case I need to say something fast," he'd said. Rachel had laughed, kissed his forehead, and told him he was safe. She meant it. She believed it. But Liam wasn't convinced. The storm had started earlier than anyone predicted. Snowflakes drifted like ash, slow and heavy, sticking to the windows in thick patches. The power flickered twice, humming the way old circuits do when they're begging to fail. Liam kept glancing at the living room window, searching the yard with his eyes. The shadows outside looked wrong, too long, too still. Rachel had promised she would be home before the storm hit hard. Liam checked the clock. 6:52 p.m. She was already late. He pushed the half-finished card away, folded his arms on the table, and rested his head on them. The hum of the fridge comforted him. The ticking of the old wall clock comforted him. Everything was familiar and safe until suddenly, it wasn't. The lights went out. Not the usual flicker. Not a dimming. Just gone. The hum of the fridge died. The clock's second hand froze. The house fell into a darkness so complete it felt like a blanket pressed over the world. Liam sat up fast. His chest tightened. He hated the dark. He reached for the drawer where Rachel kept a flashlight. His hand shook, knocking utensils aside until cold metal touched his fingers. He flicked the switch. Nothing. Battery's dead. His breath turned shallow. He hated when he could hear his heartbeat louder than his thoughts. Then he heard something else. A crunch outside. Snow being stepped on. Liam froze. Another crunch. Closer this time. He walked to the window slowly, his socks sliding on the wooden floor, every board groaning under him. He lifted a corner of the curtain. Snow fell hard outside, thick enough to blur familiar shapes, but not thick enough to hide the silhouette standing near the back fence. It was a man. Not moving, not speaking. Just standing there, facing the house. Liam's breath fogged the glass. He stepped back instinctively, but the silhouette stepped forward. One slow step, then another. Liam's spine turned to ice. He knew that shape. He had seen it once through the front window 2 months ago, the night his mother had screamed at someone on the porch. Rachel had slammed the door and told him to go to his room. His mother's ex-boyfriend, Daniel Mercer. Liam's hands balled into fists. He hated that man. He hated the way Rachel's voice shook after she talked to him. He hated the hole he punched in the drywall months earlier. He hated the way Rachel avoided looking at the bruise on her arm. Another crunch. Then another. Mercer was coming closer. Liam's mind raced. What did he want? Why now? Why during a blackout? He knew Rachel wasn't home. She was late. She wasn't here to stop him. His heartbeat thudded in his ears. Liam stumbled backwards, bumping into the kitchen table. Papers scattered. His Christmas cards fluttered onto the floor. Something else fell too. A letter he had written earlier that week, addressed in his messy handwriting. To the person who will understand. He didn't even know who he meant when he wrote it. He just felt scared. Like he needed someone to know something, even if he didn't know what. Rachel always said he was an old soul. Liam didn't know what that meant. He just knew he got scared in ways other kids didn't. More footsteps, closer. He could almost feel the vibration on the floor now. He grabbed the letter. He grabbed his coat. He grabbed the only flashlight that still worked, the tiny red one clipped to his backpack. And then he ran. He ran out the back door, into the freezing wind, into snow that swallowed his ankles. He didn't stop to see where Mercer was. He didn't stop to think. He only had one idea in his mind: the mailbox at the end of the street. If he could reach it, if he could leave the letter there, someone would find it. Someone would understand. Someone would know what he was trying to say, even if he couldn't say it out loud. Snow tore at his face. Wind numbed his fingers. His breath burned. Behind him, a voice. Liam. He didn't look back. He ran harder, the letter crumpling in his fist. The tiny red flashlight bounced against his chest, glowing weakly with each stride. He reached the street, the world spinning with cold and fear. The mailbox was 20 feet away, then 15, then 10. Almost there. And then he saw someone standing beside it. Not Mercer. Someone shorter. Older. A man with a limp, holding something shiny in his hand. A flashlight. Thomas Hale. The quiet neighbor. The man everyone avoided. The man who watched people from his porch. The man Liam had never spoken to. Liam skidded to a stop. Snow sprayed around his boots. Thomas stepped forward. "Liam," he said softly. "Come here. You can't be out here." But Liam backed away, clutching the letter to his chest. Behind him, footsteps. Faster now. He didn't need to look. He knew whose they were. Mercer was— "Liam, run!" Thomas suddenly shouted, turning toward the approaching footsteps. Liam spun around, and then everything happened at once. A shout, a struggle, a heavy thud in the snow, a flashlight beam swinging wildly, two figures clashing in the darkness. Liam stumbled backward, and then vanished from sight. Literally, just gone, like the snow swallowed him whole. For a long time that night, the town believed Liam Parker had simply run into the dark and vanished. Snow erased everything: footprints, signs of struggle, direction. By morning, all that was left was a yard full of questions and a mother who screamed her son's name until her voice cracked into pieces the wind carried away. Search teams dug through drifts taller than grown men. Dogs barked at empty air. Volunteers combed the woods with flashlights shaking in their hands. And every time someone thought they found something, a glove, a scrap of fabric, a boot print, it dissolved into nothing under the weight of doubt. The blackout stole more than power. It stole clarity. It stole the one chance Liam had. Now, decades later, I was staring at the only thing he left behind. Rachel Parker hadn't spoken much publicly after her son vanished. She moved houses twice, changed jobs, stopped celebrating Christmas. People whispered that grief had ruined her. I always thought that was cruel. Pain doesn't ruin someone. It announces what already happened. Still, it meant that tracking her down wouldn't be easy. And after receiving Liam's letter, I knew she was the only person who could fill the holes in the story. Before finding Rachel, I took the letter to an old postal historian, an old man named Harold James, who ran the miniature museum inside the abandoned train depot. He paused for almost a full minute when I placed the letter on the counter. He adjusted his glasses, traced the edges with his fingers, and whispered, "Where did you get this?" "It arrived in my mailbox yesterday," I answered. He stared at me like I had handed him a ghost. "This shouldn't exist," he finally said. "The ink, the paper, the stamp, everything lines up with mail processed the night of the blackout. But look here." He tapped the faint postmark. "This stamp was never completed. Machines stalled, conveyor belts froze, thousands of letters were trapped mid-cycle when the grid collapsed. So it was lost?" "Not lost," he corrected softly. "Buried alive." He explained something I'd never heard before. During catastrophic shutdowns, unprocessed mail sometimes gets routed to long-term storage centers. Decades later, during renovations or automated cleanings, those forgotten letters get redistributed. No one checks the age. They just go out again as if they'd been mailed that morning. It happened rarely, but it did happen. "So this was mailed hours before the blackout?" I asked. "Minutes," Harold said. "Maybe even seconds." That meant Liam had reached the mailbox. He had gotten close enough to deliver this letter before something stopped him. But that wasn't the part that made Harold's face drain of color. He placed the envelope under a lamp, revealing deeper indentations in the paper. Letters pressed so hard they dented the fibers. Under my name, Michael Reed, was another name. A name scratched out violently. Aaron Reed, I whispered. My brother. Harold looked up sharply. You know him? He was my older brother, I said quietly. He died months ago. Harold leaned back, trembling. It seems, he murmured. This letter was not meant for you. Not originally. I left the depot feeling like I was carrying two ghosts, Liam's and Aaron's. My brother had delivered mail years ago, long before I ever thought about moving back home. If Liam wrote this letter for Aaron, why change the name? Why scratch it out? Why redirect it to someone who didn't even exist at the time? I needed answers. And there was only one person who had them. Rachel Parker lived in a tiny apartment behind a laundromat. When she opened the door, she looked older than I expected. Gray streaks in her hair, tired eyes, hands that trembled slightly. But when she saw the envelope in my hand, all the color drained from her face. Where did you get that? She whispered, grabbing the doorframe as if to steady herself. It arrived in my mailbox yesterday, I said. I think it was lost in the blackout. Her knees buckled. She covered her mouth with both hands and began to shake. I didn't touch her. I just waited. After nearly a minute, she stepped aside and motioned me in. The apartment was small, warm, and filled with photos of a boy with a shy smile and messy hair. Liam. Everywhere. His drawings covered the fridge. His school projects were scattered on shelves. His favorite blanket was folded neatly on the couch. Rachel sat down slowly. I never thought I'd see that letter again, she whispered. You knew about it? I asked. Her eyes filled. I mailed it. I blinked. You? She nodded. Liam handed it to me the night before the blackout. He told me it was important. He said it was for someone who would understand. I didn't know what that meant, but he begged me to send it. She took a shaky breath. I was late for my shift. I dropped it in the mailbox on the way to work. Hours later, her voice cracked. Hours later, he was gone. I swallowed hard. And the name on the letter? Her face changed. Fear, guilt, recognition. Your brother, she whispered. Aaron. He used to bring Liam little notes and drawings from other kids on his route. He told Liam he had a younger brother someday, that he believed in him before he was even born. Liam adored him. She wiped her eyes. But the night before the blackout, Liam came to me crying. He said Aaron told him something that scared him. Something about a man who won't stop until he gets what he wants. My heart lurched. Who? Rachel looked up at me slowly. Daniel Mercer, she whispered. My ex. The man who tried to break into our house that night. Liam wasn't running from the dark, Michael. He was running from him. My stomach twisted. Rachel wasn't finished. And before Liam left the house for the last time, she said, he told me something else. Something I never understood. What was it? She swallowed. He said, if the lights go out, tell Aaron. Tell him the letter is for the other one, too. I frowned. The other one? She nodded weakly. Yes, she whispered. You. The room fell silent. Too silent. Cold crept down my spine. Rachel's eyes widened. She wasn't looking at me anymore. She was looking past me, toward the hallway. I turned, and someone was standing there. There was a silhouette in the hallway, tall, still, blocking the faint light from a bedroom lamp behind it. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Rachel pressed her hand to her chest, her eyes widening as if she were staring at a ghost instead of a living man. I turned fully, bracing myself for the worst. But when the figure stepped forward, the first thing I saw wasn't threat. It was exhaustion. Thomas? Rachel whispered. The man nodded once, stepping into the kitchen light. Thomas Hale, Liam's old neighbor. The man people once suspected, feared, whispered about. Up close, he looked older than his 50 years. His beard was silver, his hands calloused, his clothes dusty from some workshop job. But the part that struck me most was his expression. He looked like a man who hadn't slept since Liam disappeared. "I didn't want to scare you," Thomas murmured, gaze flicking between Rachel and me. "Rachel, you left the front door open. I called your name. I hadn't even noticed the door." The conversation with Rachel had swallowed everything around me. But Thomas being here, now, after all these years, after the letter resurfaced, wasn't coincidence. Rachel wiped her eyes, steadying herself. "What are you doing here, Thomas?" He hesitated. "Because I heard the news from Harold about the letter, and I need to tell you something." His voice trembled. My pulse quickened. Rachel tightened her hands in her lap. Thomas took a slow breath and lowered himself onto the chair across from us. His hands shook visibly as he folded them on the table. "I was the last person to see Liam alive," he began softly. "And I've carried that night with me every damn day since." Rachel flinched. I felt my throat tighten. Thomas swallowed. "I never hurt him. I need you both to hear that before anything else. I never touched that kid. I was trying to help him." He looked directly at Rachel. "But I failed you. I failed him. And I failed myself for years because I kept quiet." Rachel whispered, "Why didn't you say anything before?" His eyes filled with something like shame or fear. "Because no one would have believed me. Not then." He rubbed his palms together slowly, as if warming them over the dying fire of a memory. "That night," he continued, "when the blackout hit, I was outside fixing the generator. I saw Mercer's car when he turned onto Willow Lane. He wasn't supposed to be near your house, Rachel. You had that restraining order. But he wasn't the type to follow rules. He pulled up fast, headlights off." Rachel closed her eyes, already trembling. "I saw Liam open the back door," Thomas said, voice cracking. The poor kid was terrified. He held something in his hands, a letter. He kept looking back over his shoulder, like he knew someone was after him. I called his name, but he didn't hear me. He just kept running. His hands gripped the table edge. Then Mercer came after him. I yelled. I ran. I tried to grab Liam before Mercer reached him, but everything happened at once. Mercer tackled me. We both fell, and Liam, he shook his head. Liam slipped past us and ran toward the street. I leaned forward. Did Mercer go after him? Thomas nodded painfully. He did. I tried to follow, but I lost them in the storm. Just gone. Like the snow swallowed them both. Rachel was crying silently now. Thomas reached into his coat pocket. And there's something else, he whispered. Something I didn't know how to explain back then. He slid a small object across the table, a plastic toy flashlight, red, scratched, barely working. My stomach dropped. Rachel gasped. That's Liam's, she whispered. That was clipped to his backpack. Thomas nodded. I found it near the tree line behind my house the morning after the blackout. It was the only thing left. I was scared to bring it to the police. They already looked at me like I had done something, so I kept it. I know that was wrong, but I didn't want them to bury it or lose it. I picked it up. It was cold, lighter than I expected. I pressed the switch. A faint red glow blinked for half a second. Rachel broke. Her shoulders collapsed inward, years of bottled grief spilling out at once. Thomas looked at me suddenly. Your brother, Aaron. He was there after I found this. My breath caught. What? He came to my house the morning after the blackout. He was shaking. He said Liam had given him something he was supposed to protect, something he didn't want the police to see yet. Rachel stared at Thomas, eyes wide. He never told me that. He didn't tell anyone, Thomas said, because he said someone was watching, someone dangerous. He didn't trust the cops, not after seeing Mercer arguing with one of them the day before. My pulse hammered. Aaron, the brother I buried months ago, the one person I admired more than anyone, had been part of this case? What did he give you? I asked, barely able to speak. Thomas shook his head. He didn't give it to me. He said he needed to hide it. And then, he looked at the floor. He told me he feared something, that somebody knew he had it. Rachel pressed her hands together. What did he hide, Thomas? What was it? Thomas looked up at me slowly. He said it was a message, a clue. Something Liam wrote about the man in the yard. My entire body stiffened. The room felt colder than the storm outside. Rachel whispered, "Where is it now?" Thomas swallowed hard. And then he said something that sent ice down my spine. "It's not where he hid it anymore," he whispered. "Somebody already took it." Rachel's face drained of color. I felt a knot form in my throat. Thomas's voice dropped to a terrified whisper. "And Michael, they took it recently." My heart slammed once, hard. Before I could respond, before I could question, before I could fully process, a shadow passed by the window, slow, deliberate, watching. Rachel gasped. Thomas tensed. I felt the air shift. Someone was outside. For a moment, none of us moved. The world outside the window was nothing but swirling snow and darkness, but the shape, whatever it was, had definitely passed by. A slow glide, like someone testing the ground with each step. Rachel grabbed the edge of the table, her knuckles white. Thomas reached instinctively for his coat pocket, where I imagined he kept a tool or a knife or something to make him feel less helpless. I didn't move. I couldn't. My body was locked between fear and disbelief. "Who's out there?" Rachel whispered, voice trembling. Thomas didn't answer. He stepped quietly toward the window, moving with surprising lightness for a man his size. He peered through the narrow gap between the curtain and the glass. But before he could react, a heavy thud struck the wall next to the window. Rachel screamed. Thomas slammed the curtain shut, breathing hard. "That wasn't the wind," he said. "Someone's out there." My pulse hammered in my throat. I looked at Rachel, who was already shaking her head. "No," she whispered. "Not again. Not after all these years." The fear in her voice wasn't the fear of the moment. It was old, familiar, remembered fear. The kind you never forget because it lives in your bones. I stepped closer. "Rachel, who do you think it is?" She pressed her fist to her mouth, trying to steady her breathing. "Daniel," she whispered. "It has to be Daniel." Thomas shot her a look. "He moved out of state years ago." Rachel nodded shakily. "He did. But the last time someone saw him in town was the anniversary of the blackout." The room went silent again. Thomas stood completely still now, as if doing anything else would draw attention. I swallowed hard. Even if it is him, why now? Why come back after all these years? Rachel shut her eyes. Because something resurfaced, something he thought would stay gone forever. The letter. The realization hit me fast. Hard. Ugly. Thomas exhaled. He must have heard the letter was found. "How?" I asked. "Harold didn't tell anyone." Thomas shot me a grim look. "News travels. Especially news people aren't supposed to know." Before I could reply, another sound. This time on the porch. A slow creak. A boot on old wood. The unmistakable sound of someone stepping closer. Rachel covered her mouth to stop a scream. Thomas motioned with his hand for silence. We waited. Another step. And then, 3 sharp knocks. Not frantic, not angry. Thomas moved toward the door, but I grabbed his arm. "Wait." He shook his head. "If it is Mercer, you don't want him walking away knowing you're inside." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means he only knocks when he wants you to open the door." Thomas's voice turned tight. "If you don't, he stops knocking." "And then?" "Then he forces it." Rachel whimpered softly behind us. My heart battered my ribs. Thomas stepped closer to the door, slowly, carefully, and pressed his ear to it. His breathing changed. I saw the fear flash across his eyes. "What?" I whispered. Thomas leaned back. His voice was hollow. "He's breathing on the other side of the door." Rachel's hand flew to her heart. I felt everything inside me twist brutally. Another knock. Harder this time. Thomas whispered, "Stay behind me." But I didn't listen. Something in me needed to face whatever waited outside. I stepped forward. Thomas grabbed my sleeve. "Don't," he hissed. But I ignored him. I took a breath, and I opened the door. Snow blew in first, cold and sharp. The porch light flickered weakly, barely illuminating the silhouette standing there. A man, hood up, shoulders hunched, footprints deep in the snow behind him. For a long second, he didn't move. Then he lifted his head. It wasn't Daniel Mercer. It was someone younger, a man in his 20s, maybe early 30s. His eyes were sunken, tired, almost wild. He looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. His clothes were soaked with snow. And then, he said my name. Softly, like he'd been waiting for me. "Michael Reed?" My blood ran ice cold. "Yes," I said slowly. "Who are you?" His lips trembled. He lifted shaking hands, almost as if surrendering. "My name is Ethan Parker." Rachel gasped. Her knees buckled. She grabbed the wall to keep herself up. "Liam's brother," she whispered. My jaw dropped. "I thought you moved." "A long time ago," Ethan said, voice hoarse. "But I came back when I heard. When I found out the letter resurfaced." Rachel rushed toward him, tears streaming down her face. "Ethan, why didn't you call? Why show up like this?" He shook his head. "You wouldn't understand. I needed to see it myself." He turned to me. "Do you have it? Liam's letter?" I stepped back. Thomas stepped between us. "Why do you want it?" Thomas asked, voice low. Ethan's gaze drifted to the edge of the porch. His chest heaved. He looked terrified. Not of us, but of something else entirely. "Because someone is looking for it," he whispered. "And if they don't find it with me, they'll come for whoever has it." His eyes flicked to the driveway. And that's when I saw them. Headlights appearing through the swirling snow, slow, deliberate, rolling toward the house. Ethan's face drained of color. "It's him," he whispered. Rachel covered her mouth. "Daniel Mercer." The headlights rolled slowly through the snow, creeping toward the house like a predator taking its time. Ethan stepped back instinctively, shoulders tightening, his breath coming out in white, rapid bursts. Thomas moved closer to him, not protectively but cautiously, as if unsure whether Ethan was a victim or someone dragging trouble behind him. Rachel pressed both hands to her mouth, shaking her head as tears streamed down her face. I felt the cold bite my skin, not the winter cold, the kind that comes from realizing someone dangerous has finally returned to finish something they started decades ago. "Get inside," Thomas muttered, gripping Ethan's arm and pulling him fully through the doorway. I slammed the door shut as the approaching car slowed to a stop. Snowflakes pelted the windows like static. Ethan turned to me, eyes frantic. "Don't let him see the letter. Whatever happens, don't let him get it." "Why?" I demanded. "What does he want with a letter written by a 10-year-old? Ethan swallowed hard. "Because it's not just a letter. Liam wrote something about Mercer. Something that could finally expose what happened that night." Rachel staggered back. "Expose what?" Ethan's expression darkened. "Mercer didn't just show up that night. He'd been stalking you for weeks, Rachel. Liam saw him on the nights you worked late. He wrote down everything." Thomas let out a sharp breath. "You mean the entries in his notebooks? The ones the police dismissed as childhood imagination?" Ethan nodded. "They weren't imagination. Liam kept track of the times Mercer came near the house. He kept track of someone Mercer was meeting with too." "What?" I stepped closer. "Who?" Ethan looked right at me. "Your brother." My core went cold. "No," I stammered. "Aaron. He was a postal worker. He wasn't involved in anything." "He wasn't involved," Ethan said quickly. "But Mercer thought he was. Mercer believed Aaron knew something he didn't. Liam overheard Mercer talking one night, said your brother had gotten too close." Rachel covered her mouth again. Thomas cursed under his breath. Ethan pulled a folded piece of paper from his coat pocket, a photocopy. He laid it on the kitchen table. It was a page from Liam's notebook. Small, hurried handwriting. Almost illegible. But I could make out a few words. Mom's friend came back. He yelled, "He wants something." The mailman knows. I heard them on the porch. He said he'll come back when it's dark. I think it means tonight. At the bottom of the page was a crude drawing. 3 stick figures, a house, a street lamp, and next to it, a truck. Mercer drove a truck. "What does this mean?" I whispered. Ethan pointed to the stick figure labeled mailman. "Aaron tried to protect us," he said. "He told Liam he would keep his eyes open on his route. Liam trusted him." My throat tightened painfully. "But what was Aaron protecting you from?" Ethan wet his lips, glancing toward the window as headlights dimmed. "A money drop." I blinked. "What?" Thomas nodded slowly, as if confirming something he'd suspected for years. Mercer was involved in something dirty back then. People whispered about it. No one had proof. Ethan continued. "He used your street for drops. Packages left under the old mailbox, picked up by someone else later. He used the Blackout as cover. My mom didn't know. Liam didn't understand at first. But he wrote everything down. Everything he saw. And Aaron?" I asked. Ethan looked pained. He saw Mercer the night before the Blackout. Followed him. I think he found the drop point. I think Mercer realized it. "And Liam?" Rachel whispered. "Why did he run?" "Because he saw the same thing," Ethan said. "And he thought Mercer would hurt you, Mom. He thought the only way to stop him was to tell someone." My hands shook. "So he wrote the letter?" Ethan nodded. "He wrote down everything, and he trusted Aaron to deliver it if something happened to him." "But Aaron didn't," Thomas said. Ethan met my eyes. "He tried, but then the Blackout happened, and Mercer came back. A silence so heavy it felt alive filled the room. Then, a car door slammed outside. Rachel flinched hard. Ethan stepped away from the window. Thomas moved to the hallway, grabbing something heavy. A wrench, maybe. I looked at the letter on the table. This piece of paper. "Is the reason Mercer is here?" Ethan nodded. "He wants to destroy the last thing that proves Liam wasn't just a boy who got lost. He wants to erase everything." Another sound outside. Boots crunching. Closer. Thomas whispered, "Everyone stay quiet." But Ethan stepped toward the table, grabbed Liam's letter from my hand, and held it up to the dim kitchen light. "He scratched out Aaron's name because he didn't want Mercer targeting him," Ethan said. "He wrote yours instead because Aaron told him he had a little brother coming. Someone who would grow up strong, someone who would help if Aaron couldn't." My heart slammed painfully. "He wrote your name because he believed in someone he'd never met." Rachel sobbed quietly. Thomas whispered sharply, "He's coming up the steps." We all froze. Boot on wood, another, a third. Then, a shadow paused at the threshold of the door. A voice, deep, calm, terrifyingly familiar. "Rachel, open the door." Rachel's hand flew to her mouth. Mercer, the voice of the man who haunted her son's last night alive. He knocked once, just once. And then he said something that made my blood run colder than the snowstorm outside. "I want the letter." The moment Mercer said those words, "I want the letter," the air in the room shifted. It felt like the temperature dropped 10 degrees, like the walls themselves understood the threat better than we did. Rachel stumbled backward, shaking her head violently, tears already spilling. Ethan stepped in front of her without hesitation, his whole body angled like a shield. Thomas gripped the wrench so tightly his knuckles turned white. And me, I felt something rise in my chest that wasn't fear. It was anger. Anger that this man, this shadow from a past that wasn't even mine, had pushed his way into my life and destroyed a child's life decades ago. Mercer knocked again. Slower, harder. "Rachel," he called, "I'm not here for you. I'm here for the paper. Give it to me, and I walk away." Liar. His voice was too calm, too measured. Predators lie with soft voices first. Rachel choked out, Why won't you just leave us alone?" Silence. Then, because that boy didn't understand what he saw. Ethan flinched as if stabbed. Thomas whispered, "He's going to break the door." I stepped forward. "We call the police." Ethan shook his head instantly. No. No. Michael, he has friends on the force. Still does. They'll take him at his word before they take ours, especially after all this time. Rachel grabbed my arm. He's right. Mercer's boots scraped against the porch again. A slow pacing, like a wolf walking a circle around a trapped deer. "Open the door," he repeated. No one moved. Then the doorknob twitched. First once, then again. He was checking to see if it was locked. Thomas whispered, "He'll force it next." Ethan turned to me suddenly, eyes wide with fear and urgency. "Michael, the letter. You can't keep it here. If he gets in, what do you want me to do?" I hissed. He pointed to the back hallway. "Rachel's bedroom window. You can get out. Go around. Hide the letter. He won't follow you into the storm. He wants the paper, not the chase. But what about you? We'll stall him." Ethan's smile was broken, but real. "You're the only one Liam trusted without ever meeting." Rachel swallowed a sob. "Go," she whispered. "Please." There was no time to argue. The doorknob rattled again, harder. I stuffed the letter into my jacket and slipped into the hallway, footsteps barely making sound on the old floorboards. Rachel's bedroom was cold, the window frosted over. I unlocked it, lifted the frame carefully to avoid noise, and slipped outside. Snow hit my face instantly. Sharp, fast, blinding. The wind roared like something alive. I crouched beneath the window, breathing hard, listening. Inside, Mercer's voice turned sharp, impatient. "Move away from the door, Thomas. You're not stopping me." Thomas growled something back, too low for the wind to let me hear. Then, a violent crash. He was in. He'd forced the door. Rachel screamed. Thomas shouted. Something heavy hit the floor. I sprinted around the side of the house, slipping on the icy steps, the storm pelting my face. I could hear shouting inside, Rachel crying, Ethan yelling, Mercer demanding, "Where is it? Where is the letter?" I ducked behind the trash bin near the garage, pulling the letter out again. Snow soaked my sleeves as I ripped open the lid and shoved the letter deep inside a sealed storage tote filled with old winter tools. I snapped the lid shut. The wind howled, lifting snow in swirling sheets that bit my skin. Then, a scream. Ethan's voice. I sprinted back around the house, ignoring the cold, ignoring the fear. I pressed against the siding beneath the front window, heart pounding. Inside, Ethan lay on the floor, clutching his shoulder, blood seeping between his fingers. Thomas was backed against the wall, dazed. Rachel stood near the counter, trembling uncontrollably. And Mercer was standing in the middle of the living room, rage twisting his face, searching for the letter like a man possessed. He turned suddenly, eyes narrowing. "Where's Reed?" My blood froze. He knew I was here. Rachel's voice broke. "Leave him alone!" Mercer grabbed her wrist and slammed her against the counter. Thomas tried to charge him, but Mercer knocked him aside like he weighed nothing. Ethan crawled toward Rachel, trying to pull her free. I didn't think. I just moved. I rushed to the door, burst inside, and charged straight at Mercer. The shock on his face was the only advantage I had. I slammed into him with everything I had, knocking him backward into the coffee table. The table collapsed beneath him with a crack. He grunted, rolled, and swung wildly. His fist grazed my jaw, sending a burst of pain across my face. I staggered, but didn't fall. "You don't know what you're doing," Mercer snarled. "That letter will ruin more than you realize." I spat blood. "Good!" He lunged forward, grabbing a broken piece of the table leg. He swung it toward me, but Thomas, bleeding from the temple, grabbed Mercer's arm mid-swing. "Not this time," Thomas growled. The two crashed into the wall, the drywall cracking from the impact. Ethan grabbed Rachel and pulled her behind the couch, shielding her with his body. Mercer broke free of Thomas's grip, kicked him in the stomach, and turned to me again, panting hard. "Where is it, Reed?" My chest heaved. "It's gone." His eyes widened. "You're lying." "No," I said, stepping forward. "You destroyed one boy's life trying to hide the truth. You won't destroy another." Mercer lunged, but he never reached me. The front door burst open. 2 police officers stormed into the room, guns drawn, shouting at Mercer to get on the ground. He froze. For the first time tonight, he froze. Rachel collapsed into Ethan's arms. Thomas slumped onto a chair, exhausted. I leaned against the wall, breath ragged, the storm wind swirling into the room. Mercer raised his hands slowly. He knew it was over. One of the officers cuffed him. The other asked, "Who called us?" Ethan lifted his chin. "I did," he said softly. "The moment I got here, I left my phone in the bushes." Mercer glared at him with pure hatred. "You'll regret this," he hissed. Ethan didn't blink. "No. I've regretted staying quiet for 20 years. Tonight is the first thing I don't regret." The officers dragged Mercer outside into the swirling snow. Silence followed. Long, heavy, relieved. Rachel sobbed into her hands. Thomas wiped blood from his forehead. Ethan leaned against the wall, his breath trembling. I walked to him slowly. "You okay?" He nodded weakly. "And you?" I looked at the storm outside, at the dark street, at the shadows that had haunted this family for decades. "I'm alive," I said. "And the letter is safe." Ethan let out a breath that sounded like 20 years of weight finally falling off his shoulders. "What was in it?" he whispered. I shook my head. Not what Mercer wanted to erase. What Liam wanted someone to remember. Ethan swallowed hard. "What's that?" "That even in the dark, someone cared enough to tell the truth." He closed his eyes, and for the first time since I'd met him, he smiled. "If this story moved you the way it moved me, don't leave without telling me what part hit you hardest. And if you want more endings that bring truth out of the dark, make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and share your thoughts below. Your voice helps keep these stories alive.